Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books I hope to read in the month of May. And in full disclosure, I'm going to admit that this is the second time that I'm recording this video. I tried to record it the first time a few days ago, and I was still getting over kind of a head cold that I've had. You might still hear it in my voice a little bit. And I kind of rushed through the video so I wouldn't cough on the video. So I'm going to record it again. But what that means is, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that at the end of the video, I do a random selection of books with a random alphabet letter. And I've already chosen those books in the first video, and I'm going to use the same ones. So I'm going to talk about the ones that I chose and the letter, but you won't see me doing it live on the video because I did it in video number 1. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is talk about a few books that I still have on my list from previous months because I'm trying to keep up with those as I continue throughout the year. I'm also going to talk about a bunch of new books that I'm adding to my list for this month. And my theme was generally just a bunch of popular books that I have been wanting to read for a long time that I've heard a lot of great things about. So I've got a bunch of those on my list, and then I'll talk about my Alphabet Challenge books at the end of the video. So the books that I still have on my list from previous months, I am still trying to get to The Last Astronaut by David Wellington. And as far as I'm aware, this is a book about an astronaut that was kind of retired, a female astronaut, that NASA goes back and asks her to re-engage with a program. And I think that why they ask her to re-engage is because they see a ship coming toward Earth. So it's kind of like a alien-human connection storyline, as far as I know. I have not gotten to it yet, so hoping to get to that still. Also adding back into the list is a book called Echoes of You. This is the second book in the Lost and Found series by Catherine Cowles. It's a small town connected romance series with a bunch of connected characters. And I am actually super far through this book. I've started reading it at the end of April and I'm 85% in. So I'm definitely planning to finish it in this next month, hopefully even in the next couple of days. Also adding into my list, Middle of Night. This is the second book in the Jack and Jill series by Jewel Ann. And this is a book about kind of a quirky brother and sister, adult brother and sister, who are in kind of a witness protection program. And we learn a little bit about their background from book 1, but definitely it doesn't solve the mystery of everything that's happened. And so I'm looking forward to diving into book 2 and just continuing that storyline. And then the other book I didn't get to yet is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren is 2 authors writing together under one name. And I've read, I think 1 or 2 books by this author, this pair. And this is just the next one that I'd heard really, really good things about. I believe it is about a woman who is a doctor or a resident, and she's about to be married. She's engaged. And then her old flame from high school resurfaces, and she's trying to kind of think about how that impacts her current situation and current relationship. Okay, those are the old books that I had on previous lists that I haven't gotten to yet, and the new books that I'm adding. So, and I'm going to tell you as much as I know. I might even dig up some of the descriptions on these because there's some that I just don't know very much about, and I've just heard that they're great. So the first one is a book called Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. And I'm intrigued by this one because a lot of people talk about it, and what is implied in the description of this book is that the male main character, it's a romance, but the male main character is mute, or he doesn't talk, or he communicates in a way that's unusual. And that's really all I know. That's kind of the setup for this romance. I think this is also the first book in some interconnected books. I'm not sure if it's a series or if it's just books that are kind of loosely connected, but I'm going to pick that one up. I've heard a lot of things about it. The next one on my list is called The Kingmaker. This is the first book in the All the King's Men series by Kennedy Ryan. I think I've read one other book by Kennedy Ryan. This is also a romance. And this book, the kind of premise of it is it's a romance, but it's set in I think it's people who are kind of political activists around sustainability and environmentalism. I think that's kind of the backdrop. And I've just heard, again, really great things about it. So I'm adding that one to my list as well. Also added to my list a book called Flock by Kate Stewart. This is the first book in the Ravenhood series. And I think this is a series that is meant to be a retelling of Robin Hood. I think it's a romance. Again, I know scant details about these, But the Robin Hood thing kind of pulled me in. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I've read Kate Stewart, but I read her like a one-off romance novel that she wrote that was set around the holidays, and I loved it. I thought it was super fun. So I'm interested to dive into this and kind of see what her other work looks like. I also added to my list another sports-themed romance. Those have been kind of fun for me to dive into lately. This one is called Wildcat by Rebecca Genshak. It's the first book in the Wildcat hockey series. There are a ton of hockey-themed romances. This is like a complete subgenre of romance literature. And so I thought I would just like pick one and like randomly dive in. I feel like I haven't done much hockey. I've done ice skating, soccer, football, and a number of other sports themes, but not necessarily this one yet. So I'm gonna dive into this one first. Okay, then I also am picking a book called If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. And I'm actually gonna look at this one and see what the plot is because I'm not remembering this one. But it says, okay, so this is kind of like a little bit of a mystery, it sounds like. And it basically says, for the main character, I wasn't with Finn on that August night, but I should have been. It was raining and he and Sylvie were arguing as he drove down the slick road. No one ever says what they were arguing about. Other people think it's not important. They do not know there is another story, the story that lurks between the facts. So I think this is a YA book, and again, have heard pretty good things about that one. So I added that to my list as well. Okay, I also added the first book in the Magnolia Parks universe series. It is called Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is a book that I honestly don't know if I'm gonna like or not, but I've heard so many people talking about it, I thought I should just try it out and see what I think. What people say is it's about kind of like these toxic relationships, and they've compared it to like Gossip Girl. And some people are like kind of like loving this, but also hating it at the same time. And I'm just kind of intrigued by like, why are people talking about it this way? So I'm not entirely sure that I'm gonna like this one, but I thought I would just kind of like dip into it and see what it's all about, because I see a lot of people talking about it and they say they just have gotten completely sucked in. There's a few books in this series. So I'm gonna give it a whirl, see what I think. I also added to my list a very popular romance author that I've not read yet. Her name is Elsie Silver, and I picked the first book in her Chestnut Spring series, which is called Flawless. Elsie Silver recently had another book come out in another series. I see her pop up everywhere. She's like relatively prolific. She's written a lot of stuff, and I have never read her before. So I added one of her books to my list this month. I also added to my list a book that is recent by Abby Jimenez, who is one of my, I would say, favorite romance authors. I've read everything she's written and I really enjoy everything that she's done. She has a third book in her Part of Your World series called Just for the Summer. The first book was called Part of Your World. The second book was called Yours Truly. And this is the most recent one. And so I don't know much about the plot, but one of the things I've appreciated about Abby Jimenez is she often has strong representation around like mental health and neurodiversity. And so maybe that's part of this. I'm not sure if it'll be part of the characters or not. Okay, then I added a bunch of stuff that's more like fantasy. So that was a bunch of like kind of straight up romance novels. I've also got a bunch of fantasy stuff in here. So I added a book called Spark of the Everflame, which is the first book in the Kindred's Curse series by Penn Cole. And this is one I'm gonna look up too, because I don't know anything about what it's about, but I've just seen a bunch of people like talking about it, recommending it to each other. The person I recommended to loves it, is recommending it to other people. It's kind of like going around on social media right now. So here's like the quick synopsis. It says, when old secrets catch fire, everything will burn. In a mortal world colonized by the gods and ruled over by the Descended, their cruel offspring, Diem Bellator yearns to escape the insular life of her poor village. Her mother's sudden disappearance and the discovery of a dangerous secret about her past offer Diem an unexpected opportunity to enter the dark world of Descended royalty and unlock the web of mysteries her mother left behind. And then there's a dying king who has a handsome, mysterious heir. So I would guess this is kind of like a fantasy romance. So I thought I would try that one out as well. I also added to my list a book that I've wanted to read for a while called The Hurricane Wars. This is by Thea Guanzon, and pulling up the description. This one says, The heart is a battlefield. All Taliesin has ever known is the Hurricane Wars. Growing up an orphan in a nation under siege by the ruthless Night Emperor, Taliesin has found her family among the soldiers who fight for freedom, but she is hiding a deadly secret. Light magic courses through her veins, a blazing power believed to have been wiped out years ago that can cut through the Night Empire's shadows. There is a prince who has been forged into a weapon by his father. He is tasked with obliterating any threats to the Night Emperor's rule. And then I'm pretty sure they, like glancing really through this, these two characters kind of come together to try to bring a war to an end. So looking forward to reading that. That one is also the first in a series. So I don't think there's other books out in that series yet. The previous book, Spark of the Everflame, does have additional books out in the series right now. Okay, I also added a duology to my list. This is a Rebecca Ross duology. Rebecca Ross is known for Divine Rivals, which I've talked about before. There's a duology of Divine Rivals, and I'm not going to remember the other book off the top of my head, but this is the one about the magic typewriters, if you remember me talking about that. This is a new or a different duology called Elements of Cadence. The first book is called A River Enchanted, and then there is a second book in the duology called A Fire Endless. And I'm going to open it up just to give you a quick description here. So it says, Jack hasn't set foot on Cadence in 10 long years, content to study music at the mainland university. But when young girls start disappearing from the Isle, he is summoned home to help find them. Enchantments run deep on Cadence, gossip is carried by the wind, and the capricious spirits that rule the Isle by fire, water, earth, and wind find mirth in the lives of the humans who call the land home. Adara, heiress of the East and Jack's childhood enemy, knows the spirits only answer to a bard's music, and she hopes Jack can draw them forth by song, enticing them to return their missing girls. As they reluctantly work together, they find they make better allies than rivals in their partnership. And I'm guessing that A Fire Endless, the second book, continues on from there. So that's kind of the rough outline of that. I also added to my list a book I've been trying to get to for absolutely forever, and it is called The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This is the Crowns of Nyaxia #1 in the series by Carissa Broadbent. I've never read Carissa Broadbent, but I've heard amazing things, about her work. This is, I think, a vampire story, and it's a fantasy romance. So I'm hoping I get to it because it's been a very long time that I've been wanting to read that. The other fantasy novel that I added to my list is a book called Heavenly Bodies. I believe this is also a duology by Amani Iru. And this is one that, again, I've just seen like a ton of people rave about. Here's the quick description. It says, I defy the stars. In a world where no entities exist but the stars, cruel and merciless gods that watch over the world, Alara has been cursed by fate, a prophecy that promises she will fall for a star and it will kill them both. But when one descends to wreak havoc on Alara's kingdom, she is forced to flee into the arms of her enemy in the neighboring country. As she learns more about her own magic and the depth of the star's deceit, she also finds herself learning more about the country she's forced to take refuge in and the enemy prince forced to train her into a weapon. I mean, we're hearing kind of a theme here, like enemy princes and people coming together, enemies to lovers. This is a lot of, I think, what's happening in these books. So added that to my list as well. And then the other book that I added, well, there's a few more here. One is called Binding 13, and this is by Chloe Walsh. It is part of the Boys of Tomen series. And I believe, this is a sports-themed romance in rugby. So I'm adding in one more sport into my subgenre of sports-themed romance. And this is one that I've heard, like, people just kind of like gulp these books down. They're relatively long, if I remember correctly. Let me see the length of this one. Almost 900 pages. So it's quite lengthy. And I think it's also set in a high school. And it's basically like these romances that are set in high schools, and there's multiple in the series, and people just get like completely sucked in. So I'm looking forward to trying that out, seeing what I think. I also added a backlist Lucy Score book to my pile. I really like, there's a few authors I found, Lucy Score is one of them, that I'm kind of like slowly working my way through their backlist. And she has a book called Riley Thorne and the Dead Guy Next Door, first book in the Riley Thorne series. And I don't really know much about this. I've mostly read her very kind of like straightforward romance novels. And I feel like this has probably got a little bit of a mystery thrown into it as well, which I think just sounds kind of interesting. So quick synopsis, it says, Riley Thorne is divorced, broke, living with a pack of elderly roommates, and those hallucinations she's diligently ignoring, her tarot card dealing mom is convinced they're clairvoyant visions. Just when things can't get worse, a so hot it should be illegal private investigator shows up on her doorstep looking for a neighbor who turns up murdered. And then the romance continues on from there. So that one seemed like a fun one to pick up. And then the last books that I have officially on my list for May is the box set. I am doing a box set challenge this year, and I assigned myself for May the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. This is made up of 3 books. The first one is called Clockwork Angel. The second book in the series is called Clockwork Prince. And then the final book in the series is called Clockwork Princess. And this is a series that is set in the same kind of world as I'm trying to remember the Mortal Instruments, which is the series I read last month. It was 6 books. And I'll open up the synopsis of just the first book here to share. So in these books, there is something called shadow hunters. And so this says, in a time when shadow hunters are barely winning the fight against the forces of darkness, one battle will change the course of history forever. Welcome to the Infernal Devices trilogy, a stunning and dangerous prequel to the Mortal Instruments series. So this is set in 1878 and has someone, Tessa, the main character, descending into London's dark supernatural underworld in search of her missing brother. So the Mortal Instruments series is kind of present day in terms of when it's set, and this is set in 1878. So more of kind of like a historical urban fantasy, which I think should be super fun to dive into. So as I mentioned, I did pre-choose the books in the last video. So let me go ahead and open up my Kindle here, and I'll let you know the 5 books that I chose. The letter that I chose was W. And so I picked 5 W books to add to my list for the month of May. The first one that I chose is a book called The Witch Collector, and it is by Carissa Weeks. And this is a book that I have also heard a lot about. So I'm kind of following on kind of the popular theme. Quick synopsis says, every harvest moon, the Witch Collector rides into our valley and leads one of us to the home of the immortal Frost King to remain forever. Today is that day, collecting day, but he will not come for me. I, Raina Bloodgood, have lived in this village for 24 years, and for all that time he has passed me by, and she says his mistake. She has one desire, to kill the Frost King and the Witch Collector who stole her sister, and she's trying to enact this murderous revenge. So there's somebody that I follow on social media that I've really enjoyed her reviews, and this is one that she like raves about pretty consistently, and so I thought I would add that to my list this month. I also am adding a book called Where They Found Her, and this is a novel by Kimberly McCrate. And I wanted to add in some kind of like mysteries and thrillers into my list this month because I feel like I'm balancing out some of the other genres. So basically, this rough synopsis says, motherhood hasn't been easy for Molly Anderson, and the years since the loss of her second child have been a particular struggle. But 6 months after moving from New York City to sophisticated Ridgedale, New Jersey, she's finally enjoying life again as mother of a 5-year-old daughter, and she's a fledgling arts reporter. But this tenuous stability is threatened when the body of a newborn is found in the woods behind prestigious Ridgedale University, and she's assigned the story. And she finds a decades-old trail of dark secrets that winds through every corner of the town. So it's told from her perspective, the wife of the Ridgedale police chief, and then a 16-year-old high school dropout. So that one sounded fun to pick up. I also randomly chose this book that I don't know anything about. I'm going to pull up the synopsis now. It's called What You Never Knew by Jessica Hamilton. And it says it's told in alternating points of view between the living and the dead. It's a debut novel. And it sounds like there's an island owned by a family where their 100-year-old cottage is nestled in acres of forest. 40-year-old June believed that the island had been sold after the summer of her father's disappearance when she was 12. And after the death of her older sister, she finds out that the cottage was never sold and it's still owned by her family and it's still hers. And so she goes back to this island in search of answers. Sounds good to me. So I added that one to my list as well. I also added to my list a book called What Happened to Goodbye. This is by Sarah Dessen. And I don't think I've ever read a book by Sarah Dessen, but she's a very, very popular young adult author that's been writing for a very long time. And I feel like I just like missed her. Like I was the wrong timing, like when I was a young adult, but I see her books like everywhere. And so this book, it says, a new day, a new place, a new life. In the past few years, McLean has pretended to be so many different people that she hardly remembers who she really is anymore. The adorable guy next door might be able to help her figure it out, but is she ready for it? So I thought I would pick this up as my first Sarah Dessen book to try out. And then the final book that I picked, W book, is a book called The Wednesday Sisters. And this is a novel by Meg Waite Clayton. And I will say I kind of picked this one because I just liked the cover. Like, again, I know nothing about what it is, so let's dive into the synopsis. The synopsis says that for 35 years, Frankie, Linda, Kath, Brett, and Allie have met every Wednesday at the park near their homes in California. Defined when they first meet by what their husbands do, the young homemakers and mothers are far removed from the summer of love that has enveloped most of the Bay Area in 1967. These Wednesday sisters seem to have little in common, but they're bonded by a shared love of literature and the Miss America pageant, which they watch together every year. As the years roll on and their children grow, the quintet forms a writer's circle to express their hopes and dreams. Along the way, they experience history in the making. So I thought that one sounded fun as well. So that is the long list of books that I am hoping to pick up and read in the month of May. I'm really looking forward to a ton of these that I've heard about for such a long time. And definitely check back at the end of this month and I'll report out on what I was able to finish and what I thought about those books. I hope you'll check out my debrief video also from April as well. In the meantime, till the next video, happy reading.